Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to Pewter Report's mock draft show number 4. The Bucs fix their pass rush. That's right. We are in April. We are about 21 days away from my birthday. Well, yeah, my birthday, but also the NFL draft, which happens to fall on my birthday. Josh Queipo, are you going to come down for my birthday this year?
I am going to be there, Scott. I won't be on. You and I have talked about this, but for anybody who's watching, who's interested, because I wasn't there last year. It's my first year since joining Pewter Report. I wasn't able to make the live draft shows, but I won't be there for night 1. But I will be there for all of day 2 and all of day 3. So I'm excited.
That sounds great. I'm excited too. We're excited to talk about Pewter Report's latest mock draft, our 4th edition, presented by Jorgensen Law Office. You can check them out on the web at Jorgensen Law Office. Jorgensen Law P.A, champions of the injured and disabled. 727-347-7733 is the number to call for a free case evaluation. Remember, no fees until they win for you. You can visit them on the web at jorgensenlawoffice.com, specializing in personal injury, workers' compensation, and Social Security. Folks, I am your host, Scott Reynolds from Pewter Report, and alongside me is Josh Queipo. Josh, we have put the finishing touches on mock draft number 4. Our final mock draft is going to be out the week of the draft, so this is what we think is probably our best version to date in terms of addressing some needs. We got a cornerback in there because we said last time we probably need a corner, and we have one in there in this mock draft. I've put that in the chat. Thanks for joining us tonight, and we appreciate Jorgensen Law Office for sponsoring not just our mock drafts, but our mock draft shows. So, Josh, your thoughts on this process, just to kind of recap a little bit here. We've had Sonny Styles as the first draft pick by the Buccaneers back in January, and we even put a little asterisk there saying probably not going to be there at 15, and of course he won't be. He blew up at the combine as we expected. Then we had Cassius Howe. We went with an edge rusher in our second mock draft in the first round, and we kind of like that idea of helping the Bucs pass rush and getting an edge rusher. But, in hindsight, I'm not sure he's going to go that high at number 15, right? So we kind of course-corrected a little bit. And in our latest mock draft, version number 3, we went with an inside linebacker because the Buccaneers, well, they've got Christian Roseboom. They've got Servancier Dennis at Mike, but they need a better Mike than those guys. And Alex Anzalone, as Todd Bowles told me at the NFL annual meeting that I just got back from in Phoenix, Arizona, Alex Anzalone will be playing the Mo backer, which is the money backer, that weak side linebacker spot that Levante David played. So kind of made sense to put C.J. Allen from Georgia in there. But as it turns out, might be a little too high for him at number 15. So we've decided to go in a different direction. You probably have seen the graphic already. You know that our draft pick for the Buccaneers in the first round this time around is Akheem Mesidor from Miami, the edge rusher who led the Hurricanes. That's right, not Reuben Bain Jr. Akheem Mesidor led the Hurricanes in sacks with 12.5 this season and had a tremendous year. So let's get started with our mock draft show this episode here, Josh. But first, just kind of your overall thoughts before we start diving into each one of these picks, starting with Mesidor.
Yeah, I mean, for those who are paying attention, they can see you and I oscillating on positions: linebacker, edge, linebacker, edge, right? And then watch Jason goes and takes a guard. I don't know,
or a tight end or something. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think that these are two position groups where they're two of the deepest position groups in this draft class.
Yeah.
But I don't always think that the value lines up with where the Bucs are picking at 15, which is always interesting. I think the value tends to line up on their later picks versus consensus. I think that this is probably the best one that lines up value with the pick number. With that said, I'm lower on him than most. So it's an interesting one. There are some real big red flags that we in the public aren't going to necessarily have the best insights into. So if the Bucs were to take a pick like this, then you'd have to think that those red flags weren't red. And then I would feel a lot better about the pick. But in general, 15, it's not a great place to be. I hate it.
Right.
I think I've seen a couple of people in the chat saying trade down. I would love or trade back. I would love for the Bucs to trade back in this draft if they can partner.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing too, is Jason Light even kind of said that. We were talking with him at the NFL annual meeting, and he was asked about, would you consider trading up? And he kind of said, yeah, we'd consider it, but then he volunteered. This year we might be more apt to trade down. So he kind of volunteered the fact that I think he is actively looking to trade down for the reason that you just suggested, Josh, because there are some players that I think can be had at 15 that might be better value. And not saying that Akheem Mesidor or C.J. Allen or Cassius Howell wouldn't necessarily be a good first-round pick for the Buccaneers. I think that they might be. But I think everybody, including yourself and myself, would like those picks better if they were in the 20s rather than the teens, especially if you can get a player that you might want in the first round later and pick up an extra day 2 pick that gives you some ammo to make some more moves in the draft, or quite simply another player, another day 2 pick that you can use to help build out this roster, maybe find another starter, or maybe even better, a star. So I'm with you on that. Whether they draft C.J. Allen, whether they draft an Akheem Mesidor, whether they draft a Cassius Howell, all those players I think would help the Buccaneers. But I would be in favor of them trading down a few spots in order to do that. And you look at Ty Simpson, a quarterback from Alabama, who probably going to go in the first round. The Jets are sniffing around him, and they pick at 16. That might be putting the Buccaneers in the catbird seat. If you are a Pittsburgh Steelers team that might want a quarterback to groom behind Aaron Rodgers, who we think will re-sign with the Steelers for Kevin McCarthy again, reuniting them from their days in Green Bay, then you might have a situation where the Buccaneers can trade down to 21, get a day 2 pick out of that move, still get a player they like in the first round, while the Jets are left hanging, not getting Ty Simpson. Just a scenario out there that I throw out. But yeah, it seems like Jason Light certainly seemed more inclined to trading down. I wrote a story about that on PewterReport.com just a couple of days ago.
Yeah. Now, we didn't do a trade back in this mock.
Correct.
We have in the last couple of years done some things we don't traditionally do. Maybe our last one we do a trade back. That would be kind of interesting.
Yeah, maybe.
But last year we did a trade our first round pick for Trey Hendrickson.
That's right.
But this time we did something a little bit different. I guess more chalk. We stuck and we picked. Yes. And with that, we picked Akheem Mesidor. Yeah. There's a lot to like with Mesidor. There really is. The tape is really strong. You mentioned, and I like how you brought it up, that it was not Ruben Bain who led the team in sacks.
Right.
Bain got a lot more of the attention though, right? Yeah. So Mesidor was. I'm reticent to say he was the guy across from Bain because he's a lot better than that. Yeah. But he definitely didn't get as much attention as Bain did. The cool thing about Mesidor is he took advantage of that opportunity. So, right. 63 pressures, 21% win rate. And I love how you put it. The Bucs fixed their pass rush, right? Mm-hmm. He's got one of the deepest bags of tricks in this entire draft class. Is he really as athletic as some of the other guys? He doesn't have the bend of a Cassius Howell. He doesn't have the burst off the line of a David Bailey. But when you talk about somebody who really understands how to win and moves together and creates a plan throughout an entire game, there might not be a better guy in this draft class than Akheem Mesidor.
It's really interesting because he has quite a backstory. He came from Canada, from Ottawa, Ontario, and he actually played at Clearwater Academy International here in Clearwater, Florida. And it's interesting because I wonder, we haven't seen his name come across as a official 30 visit, but because he went to high school here in the Tampa Bay area, he could qualify for a local pro day visit. So he might actually be one of those guys to come in as en masse with the local pro day guys, which should be happening in about a week or two. I think they're having 2 local pro days here for the Buccaneers. And so it would be interesting to see if he actually shows up for one of those. That way they don't have to burn an official 30 visit on him. But he started his career as a safety / linebacker / defensive end at West Virginia. And within his first year, he put on an immense amount of weight. And he actually got up to, he was enrolled around 200 pounds, 200 to 205 pounds. He put on about 70 pounds within the first 2 years at West Virginia and started playing defensive tackle.
Yep.
And he had 2 seasons back to back where he had over 5 sacks and was widely regarded as one of the better defensive tackles in the country as far as a young pass rusher. So then he goes to Miami and has 7.5 sacks there in his first season as a defensive tackle. And then he injured both of his feet. He had a surgery on both of his feet in the tendons, completely rebounded from that, played every single game the next year, had a good season at 5.5 sacks. But then Jason Taylor wanted him to play edge rusher. So he was up to about 280 pounds, and then he lost the weight and went down to 259 pounds to play opposite Ruben Bain. And this guy is all ball. He and Bain are thick as thieves. They are all business. They are complete professionals. Jason Taylor took both of them under his wing and has molded them. And if you don't know who Jason Taylor is, he was a Hall of Famer for the Miami Dolphins, one of the elite pass rushers from yesteryear, and just basically groom these guys into being professionals. And so this is a player that will do whatever it takes to be successful, moving from defensive tackle to edge rusher, dropping nearly 30 pounds to do that, and then doing it exceptionally well. So there's a lot to like here. He even played some interior snaps in nickel pass rush situations where he'd line up next to Bain as a 3-technique defensive tackle sometimes last year. And so the versatility too. Yeah, the versatility that the Buccaneers would be getting. We know how Todd Bowles likes to put Vita Vea at defensive end sometimes, and Kalijah Cansey, and move his outside linebackers inside to just give different pictures to offenses. I think Bowles would be salivating at getting a player like Akheem Mesidor.
Yeah. I mean, the versatility is there, and not only would he play, did they play him inside, but Miami would drop him a good amount, and he didn't look lost as a dropper. No. He's not I wouldn't say he's the cleanest 3-4 outside linebacker. I think in perfect world, I would probably make him a 4-3 end. Yeah. But that's not to say he can't do it, and he doesn't, and he has the experience. Yeah. So that goes to, and I think one of the things I'm hoping that our readers and our listeners are starting to hone in on in terms of what you and I are thinking the Bucs are looking for in this edge rusher. It's a little less of a complete player than it has been in the past. Still versatile, but in the past, we've thought about, well, you got to play the run really, really strong in order to be somebody that they're going to target for Bowles. This year, it's all about can you rush the passer? Like Howell, we've talked about our Mason Thomas, Mesidor, all of these guys in their own unique ways, because Mesidor is a lot different in terms of physical profile from Howell and our Mason Thomas, but all of them are considered some of the best pass rushing edges in this class outside of the guys that the Bucs aren't going to be in range for unless they move up. So and he certainly fits the bill. So I love the way that he goes about his business and his hand usage, and he maximizes all of his physical talents. This is a guy who uses a swipe, a ghost move. He'll dip and rip, cross his face. He's got every bag or every trick in the bag. And he sequences them really well, and he sets up his counters. So all of that, and then he's just smart. He'll put his hands up and he'll bat passes when he can't get to the quarterback. So he's always trying to affect the play.
Yeah. I mean, 35 and a half career sacks. Now, granted, he did play 6 years. Now, one of those years was essentially a redshirt year because he did get injured. Now, I will say this for those of you who, have read up on him, and that's completely fine to do your homework and all that. And here's a comment here. It says, I just can't get there with Mesidor. I think he's a fringe top 50 player. He's older. He has an injury history. It's a weird fit. I'm just out on this pick. I don't see that at all. I mean, the injury history, he missed one game over the last 2 years, and he played 13 games in 2024. Didn't miss a single game coming off that injury. And then last year, he missed one game, which was the Stanford game, out of 16 games. The Hurricanes played 16 games, and he missed one game due to a leg injury, and then came back the next week and didn't miss any of these games down the stretch in the playoffs and, of course, the national championship game. He has been medically cleared from those foot injuries, right? I mean, Luke Edeke had a foot injury, okay?
Yeah.
And he came back and played and didn't miss a beat. So just because you have had an injury in the past doesn't necessarily mean it's going to reoccur again. Jamel Dean tore both of his ACLs in college and high school and never had an ACL issue in the NFL. Different injuries, but not an ACL. So to me, if this was, well, he played all of last year, that's fine. He's 2 years removed from having those foot surgeries. And the thing too is we're not just talking about 2 12-game seasons. We're talking about a 13-game season and a 16-game season. So that's essentially 2.5 seasons, given how far they went into the playoffs and, of course, the national championship.
Yeah, I've heard whispers that it may be that the foot is deteriorating, and that's I can't confirm that. It's just something that we don't see. It is something that I've heard. So again, if this were the Bucs pick, then he's obviously cleared their medical checks. With that said, I could see him falling if whatever the team see from these scans is that they feel like it's degenerative. They feel like it's going to be an issue. And, he got the most out of it during his last 2 years in college, and he collected a ton of money to do that in the name, image, and likeness world that college players live in now. So I don't think that it's it's definitely not a problem. But if it checks, it definitely pushes him back up. So that is to say, you and I both feel like the tape on him makes him one of the better players in this class.
For sure.
The age, I think that's a real concern. It's one of those things where you say, with most college players, you would say, okay, this is where they are and this is where they project to be, right? There's growth.
Mm-hmm.
With Mesidor, he's much closer to his ceiling because of his age. Pretty decent ceiling. I don't think it's a fantastic ceiling. I think I saw a comment earlier that said Mesidor would immediately be the best pass rusher on this team. I definitely don't think that that's the case walking in. And I just don't think that there's a ton of room to grow. But he's somebody you could probably plug in. And within, now you look at this pass rush, which they've been raising the floor of, he certainly fits in well to create a consensus of pass rush, right? Yeah. I don't think he's that guy, but he's a part of a group of guys.
Yeah. There are some that believe that Akheem Mesidor is actually a better and more talented pass rusher than Ruben Bain is. And some would even say a better player. And I've heard that inside the building, and I've heard that around the league. And trust me, I think Bain's going to get drafted first. There's no doubt about it. But it doesn't necessarily mean he's going to end up being the better player. It's just like Arvell Reese might go ahead of Sonny Styles. Maybe he becomes the better player. Maybe Styles becomes the better player. Not sure. But I think the thing is both Arvell Reese and Sonny Styles are pretty good. And both Ruben Bain and Akheem Mesidor are pretty good. As Realtor David Zussman says, Mesidor is the second best pass rusher in this class. The only problem is that I would still trade down because you can add more help in different positions, but trading down. I agree, and I think, Josh, you agree as well. If you want to draft Akheem Mesidor, you trade down as low as you can and then get him. My concern is, from what I have been hearing, and I've got some sources in and around the Cowboys, at number 20, the Cowboys love Akheem Mesidor. They love C.J. Allen, and they love Jacob Rodriguez. So the Buccaneers have a chance to draft one of those three players at 15, and then we'll probably lose out on one of those players at number 20 when the Cowboys have their second pick. So, again, you want to trade down, that's fine, but you have to be prepared to lose a player. You can't trade down and say, we're still going to target this player. If you trade down 5 picks, you better have 6 players or 5 players that you like, because there's a possibility that each one of those can be off the board and you're stuck with one of those guys, depending on how far you trade down. Real Bucs Talk has this comment here on Mesidor. Very skilled. Age is the norm now with COVID and NIL. If his medicals check out, I am fine with it. He has inside and outside versatility, which fits Bowles and what he likes to do on D. That's true. So here's what Todd Bowles and Jason Light had to say, because I had a funny feeling they would like Akheem Mesidor. And I asked Jason Light about, are you opposed to drafting not just an older player, but a 24, 25-year-old player? And folks, if you don't know, Akheem Mesidor's birthday is April 5th. Turns 25. And Jason Light had this to tell me. Sometimes you're happy to take a player who is maybe entering his early prime years. We take everything into account. We think about everything. In the NFL, you're not necessarily on a 10-year plan. You do want to win. You want to win early, but you also want to sustain it as long as you can. It kind of depends. It's a case-by-case basis. We took Vita, and he was a little older. The bottom line, we want good football players, and it's hard to predict what's going to happen in 3, 4, or 5 years. Of course, everybody wants to win now, but you have to ingest everything and take everything into account. At the end of the day, you want to take the best player. And then I asked Todd Bowles the same question. He laughed at me. He said, you tell me when 24 and 25 have become old. When I was 24 and 25, I didn't feel old at all. I was doing backflips over fences and jumping off buildings. I understand what you're saying in football terms, but to me, that's not old. It really isn't old. It's experience. It really is experience from that standpoint, whether you're 20, 21, 22, or 25. If you're a good football player, you're a good football player. And so I think sometimes when you sit there and you draft a player and you think, all right, well, there's the rookie wall and there's the learning curve and all of these types of things, and it might take a guy a couple years to develop. I think the thinking is with Akheem Mesidor, Josh, when you draft this guy, you're getting a guy like what you see is what you get. And he's going to come in with more polish, more experience, and he should be ready to make an instant impact. So if you draft the 23-year-old player, and let's use Yaya Diaby as an example. This past season, Yaya's best season, right? And this was his third year into it. And Yaya's even an older player. Yaya is going to be 27 or 28 this year, right? Because he was an older player as well. But it took him 3 years to get to this point. If Akheem Mesidor comes in and is close to where Yaya is as a rookie at 25, he's just going to bypass those 2 learning curve years already and entered as a 25-year-old, smash, last, play, edge rusher kind of guy.
I don't know if I can get all the way there with you. I understand what Jason and Todd have said. And yes, Vita was a little bit older. Vita was 22. That's a 3-year difference. Yeah. So from the difference between Vita and Mesidor is by the time Vita got to Mesidor's age, he was signing his extension. That's the difference. And yes, again, we're in the name and image and likeness. Guys are staying in longer because they can actually get paid in college. But there is still a difference between a guy who's 22, 23, and a guy who will be 25 when he starts. Let's not forget, if he makes it, if he's drafted in the first round and he makes it to his 5th-year option, he will be the same age as Chris Godwin is now.
That's right.
So these are some of the things. Like, so when you draft a first-round player, you do want him for a second contract. I understand what Jason's saying. You don't know what's going to happen 3 or 4 years from now, but that is still the hope. You want the next Mike Evans, the guy who spends, 12, 13 years with your organization. So it's something, it's not disqualifying, but it's certainly, again, it puts a real hard ceiling on how much growth you can see out of that player. I think there's still going to be the rookie wall because he is going to be playing more games than he has in college. He's going up against. He's
also coming off of, and we saw this with Emeka Egbuka. He's coming off of a championship run.
Right. Yeah.
So
all of that plays into
know?
it. And to say that, again, he's not a clean prospect. I don't think there are many clean prospects in this draft.
I agree.
But what he does provide is something the Bucs desperately need, which is he's a pass rusher. He's a good pass rusher.
Exactly. We have a comment here. Super chat from Tall Florida Guy, $4.99. Mesidor would instantly be the best pass rusher in the team, a no-brainer pick, a complete player. Josh takes exception to that. I don't know if he'd be the best pass rusher, but I think he would come in maybe more ready than any other pass rusher in this draft. Again, he's got a track record of doing 35.5 sacks from inside, from outside, using every single pass rushing technique and move that you could possibly imagine. And again, I think there's some real value. And to me, this is the cherry on top. There's some real value when you've had as good a coaching as he's received from Jason Taylor, not just him, but Bain as well. And I've got some quotes here from Jason Taylor that I'm going to share, and this is going to be part of my SR's Fab 5 tomorrow, so I'm not going to read everything here. But this is what Jason Taylor had to say about both of those particular players. He said, they've got everything. Number one, they have the mental makeup. They love football. Not to take anything away from anybody in the league, but there's a lot of guys that don't love ball or have different motivations. There's nothing wrong with that. Everybody has their different motivations. But these two guys love ball. That's, again, Jason Taylor talking about Akheem Mesidor and Ruben Bain. He said the way they work, their love for football, their love to be successful, they fell in love with the process of being great. You know, everybody wants to be great. Everybody says they want to be great. Not everybody falls in love with that process. You know, everybody wants to get to heaven, but nobody wants to die. Everybody wants to be great. Not everyone's willing to do what it takes to be great. These two guys love it. That's why they're going to be really good. So I like the fact that he's had that level of coaching, that he has the polish, that he has the production, that he has the size. And again, you're talking about Todd Bowles wanting to get bigger. And I think you're going to see in this mock draft here, folks, what Josh and I have come up with. This is a bigger defense that Todd Bowles is going to be putting on the field this year. Alex Anzalone, a little bit bigger than some of the linebackers they've had. He's 6'3", 240 pounds. You've got Ashawn Robinson, who is about 30 pounds heavier than Logan Hall, right? You've got Al-Quadin Muhammad at 255 pounds is 15 pounds heavier than Hassan Reddick was. And at 259, 260 pounds, you've got a guy here in Akheem Mesidor who's about 20 pounds heavier than Hassan Reddick was. And
someone who's proven he can put on extra if need be.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. So Akheem Mesidor is the first-round pick. He helps the Bucs from a maturity standpoint because he's ready to go. He's going to fit in that locker room exceptionally well and certainly fit in Todd Bowles' defense. As Josh said, he can drop, which nobody wants to hear, but he can. He can rush inside. He can rush outside. He's a pretty fine player. So if they had to stick and pick, I would be fine with them doing it at 15. I would love it even better if they could trade down. In the second round, this is not fantasy football, folks. We're trying to keep it real here. And I just don't think that Jacob Rodriguez is going to be there when the Bucs are on the clock, as much as it pains me. Now, I did tell Jason Light at the NFL annual meeting, and yeah, I might have had an old-fashioned or two after I said this, or before I said this. I said, Jason, you got to find a way to draft Akheem Mesidor in the first round, and then you got to move up and get Jacob Rodriguez. And Jason just kind of nodded his head. So was he just doing that to appease me, or was he telling me his draft plans? I'll let you decide. But we do go inside linebacker in the second round. And it's a player that I think Josh was a little higher on at first than I was, but I've really done some investigating on him, and I've went and watched a bunch of interviews. I've watched some tape.
I've come down, you've come up.
I know, exactly, yeah. Well, that's you and I, Josh. People don't know this. They're not privy to the Pewter Report group chat, but we are the contrarians. You are the yin, I am the yang. But we do like, at least, Jake Golday from Cincinnati, who was our middle linebacker in the second round. And not like Akheem Mesidor where you smash last and play linebacker here, because he's probably going to need a little bit of seasoning. And I think that's maybe why they signed Christian Roseboom, and you still have Servassier Dennis just in case This guy is not exactly quite ready to wear the green dot and play the Mike linebacker position. He can learn on the fly without having the pressure of being a day one starter. Not to say that he couldn't maybe be a day one starter, but a little bit of a developmental guy just because of his character arc. And I'm going to start things off, Josh, and I'll let you finish it. If his uniform looks familiar to you, that is Central Arkansas. That's exactly where Jake Golday started his career. And if you watch the David Walker podcast that we did a couple weeks ago with the Bucs inside linebacker, I guess it was, or outside linebacker, I guess it was a week ago, you'll know that David Walker and Jake Golday were teammates there at Central Arkansas before Golday moved on to Cincinnati and David Walker moved on to the NFL.
Yep.
But there he was as a defensive end and then moved to middle linebacker his second season there, or his third season at Central Arkansas, and then transitioned to playing linebacker at Cincinnati, where he still showed those pass rushing chops as a blitzer and played everything from Sam linebacker to Will linebacker to Mike linebacker. And I think that position versatility made him a better player and also showed, Josh, that he's got quite the football IQ.
Yeah, really, really interesting prospect. The tools are that of a day two, maybe even a day one guy. But like you said, there's a lot of seasoning there because he was late to coming into being an off-ball linebacker.
Yeah.
But even at Cincinnati, and please feel free to go back to that very first picture and just leave it up for a long time. Personally, I loved watching him tackle that player of that particular team.
Charge on into the ground, right? Charge into the ground.
Take that, yeah. So with Golday, it's even interesting the way that Cincinnati used him. He had more snaps as a slot defender than he did in the box. Mm-hmm. Okay, and they used him in a very unique way. So they would basically line him up as a slot defender and then have him kind of spike the B gap. And loop around the edge rusher. And they used him a lot as a pass rusher. So right there, you say, okay, that's something that Todd Bowles could take and do. And there are a lot of ways where he would fit into this defense because you could walk him up as the fifth man on the line to change the picture right before the snap. He can hold his own, holding the edge, setting a hard edge. You can walk him down as a mugged up linebacker. So as a pass rusher, he fits the bill of a modern day linebacker in contributing in that way. In coverage, not a smooth athlete, but he's got these long arms and he's pretty smart in coverage and he closes windows really well and he'll force incompletions. The one thing though is like, can he actually be a good linebacker? And that's where I think the seasoning part comes from. I think he's a little slow as a processor. He's still got to learn how to work in the box. I don't think he's twitchy enough to really be a great box defender, longer strider. And so, like, I would love him as a day three pick. Like this guy, you take him in the fourth round, you're like, oh man, in 2 years, this guy could come out of nowhere. And I think I saw a comment earlier. I said something about like, if he hits, he's Zach Bond. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
And Bond was an edge rusher converted to inside linebacker at the NFL level, right?
Yeah.
So I see that comp and I respect it. The thing is, are you taking that in the second round? You're probably going to have to.
Yeah.
But will he be an immediate starter for you? Probably not. So it's a bet on traits. It's a longer term bet. I can see the vision. But there's a high bust potential with Jake Golday. So it really comes down to how confident are you in the person? And his ability to reach that ceiling.
Yeah, he's a grinder. I've done a lot of research on him. He is again, I like the tape. I love the person, and I love the prospect that he could be. And trust me, I'm one of these guys. You know, I've said it all the time on the podcast. I've written about it. I prefer production over potential. I just do. I think the potential is there with him, but I also like the production, right? I mean, he didn't just stumble his way into 105 tackles last year. He was an active, find the ball, get the ball type of tackler. 6 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks, 3 pass breakups, and a forced fumble. That was just as a senior. His first year as a middle linebacker at Central Arkansas, he had 84 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks, and a forced fumble. His first season at Cincinnati, kind of in between those two, 58 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, a sack and a half, 2 pass breakups, 2 forced fumbles, and a fumble recovery. I see enough splash plays on tape. I see enough room for growth on the tape. I also see a big 6'4", close to 240-pound linebacker with 4.62 speed that can move. Is he the most agile guy? I watch a little bit of tape, and I see plays like this, right? This is the Utah quarterback who ends up slamming the brakes on, cutting back. And Golday doesn't make this tackle. But what he does do is he forces the play inside. He's a high football IQ player. He can wear the green dot. He's an excellent communicator. He's got all the cerebral makeup that Todd Bowles is looking for.
Doesn't miss tackles.
But in this instance right here, it kind of like John Lynch with Barry Sanders. You're not going to make all the tackles, right? But what you're going to do is you're going to play smart football, and you're going to force the play back into your teammates. And so there's a lot to like about this guy. But I'm with you, Josh. I'm sold on the fact that he's not a day one starter, and maybe given his draft position, he ends up beating out a Christian Roseboom or a Servassier Dennis kind of by default because maybe those guys aren't as talented. I don't know, but I'm going to take the bet on this guy's upside and his makeup. I like the mental makeup. I watched, if you want to follow along at home, folks, go watch his combine interview. You can just type in Jake Golday combine interview, and it'll pop up on YouTube. It's the entire video. It's well worth watching. He's Captain America. He reminds me a lot of Carson Schlesinger in the fact that he didn't have a ton of polish coming into the NFL, but was actually better than maybe you thought he was going to be as a top of the second round draft pick. And I think maybe there's a case that Jake Golday could be that too. But so what we've done is we've gotten bigger at edge rusher for the Buccaneers. We've gotten bigger at middle linebacker for the Buccaneers. We've added some speed and some guys that have pass rush potential. We know Todd Bowles likes to blitz the A gap with his Mike linebacker. We saw him do that without mercy when Devin White was here. Devin had a pretty good knack for doing that. He had 9 sacks during the Super Bowl season, second leading sacker on the team behind Jason Pierre-Paul. So this is a guy with his defensive end background, certainly can blitz and can get to the quarterback, and is a physical, tough, strong guy that can beat blocks and get to the quarterback.
Yeah, and those are traits that are hard to find, and especially in this draft. So it makes I can totally see the case for Golday. And like I said, if you bet on the player, the person behind the player, I should say, and you feel really good about that, and that is obviously important to the Bucs, and they're pretty good at figuring out who those guys are. And I'll go back to something you said about Mesidor, or that technically Jason Taylor said about Mesidor. Mm-hmm. That is something that's really important to this team, is finding guys who love ball, because when you find somebody who loves ball, and not every NFL player loves ball.
That's right.
And you can kind of see it in their career arcs when they don't.
Yep.
But you can find that guy. He usually makes it work.
That's right. Yep. We have a nice super chat here, $10 from Blood, Sweat, and Booze. Most rookie edges don't make an impact for a couple years. Look at the stats of some of the best. Mesidor has a bigger bag of tricks than most rookie edges. My bet is he makes an immediate impact. So let me just ask you, we'll kind of put the exclamation point on Akheem Mesidor. Let's say, for example, Josh, they select Akheem Mesidor in the first round at 15, at 20, or wherever they get him, okay? Given his bag of tricks, given the production that he's had, what would be, from a sack and pressure standpoint, because sacks are individual plays, right? Out of the hundreds and hundreds of plays you're going to get there, we reward players handsomely with Pro Bowls and big contracts if they have 10 sacks, which is 10 plays in the grand scheme of things. 10, right? So
could
not
be
a
more
lot,
than
but all that.
Because we do half sacks.
Oh, we don't do half sacks, Josh. We don't. Anyways, trying to derail me here. So what would be a successful season for you if you draft Mesidor and he's a semi-starter? In other words, he maybe doesn't start till half the season and all that. I'm thinking in my mind, if he were to get 7 sacks, kind of like what Yaya Diaby did, 7.5. Some of those were manufactured, some of those were little luck. Some of those were clean wins, right? Hustle plays. But to me, if he had 7 sacks and 40 pressures, yeah, 45, yeah, right. Is it you're thinking the same thing?
Yeah, I'd be in there.
Okay. All right. Let's go to finish out day 2 with our 3rd round pick. You know, we kind of like this size thing. We're getting bigger. We're getting bigger on defense here. And they drafted a big defensive tackle. We have them drafting in the 3rd round. Darrell Jackson Jr. from Florida State. This is a big guy with a big 7'2" wingspan, big hands, long arms, big guy, 315 pounds. This is a player too that can kind of play up and down the line. You know, Josh, the more I looked at this guy, he's not just a nose.
Nope.
He's not ideally a 3, but he can do it. But the thing is when you look at what A'Shawn Robinson's going to be doing for the Buccaneers this year, right? He's going to be starting in place of Logan Hall as that 4-eye/5 technique in the 3-4 defense when Todd Bowles deploys that, right? So you'll have him rather than Logan Hall next to Vita Vea and then Kalijah Kancey, right? That's your 3 defensive linemen in there. I can see Darrell Jackson being the understudy to A'Shawn Robinson, kind of being the backup 4-eye/5 tech. I think he can play some 3. I think he can nickel rush and give you some power. I think that he can also be a backup nose. So I like this big-bodied guy who got to the quarterback 7.5 times in his career at Florida State. Not a huge pass rusher, but he was the Florida State MVP last year.
Yeah, he was. And when you talk about upside from a physical and athletic perspective, I don't know if there's any defensive tackle in this draft, and admittedly, it's a weak draft, who has as much upside as him. Maybe Caleb Banks, right? But I will encourage all of our viewers to go to mockdraftable.com when you get a chance and put in his name, because Mock Draftable takes everybody's combine measurements and they put them within, they give context to it by putting it in within percentiles of the position group, right? So you have the 50th percentile, the 75th percentile, and then they show this really great spider chart. And the spider chart shows within like the 100th percentile, all these different data points, where does this percentile rank in a visual? And Darrell Jackson Jr.'s spider chart is basically just full. Because
it is.
His height,
I'm looking at it now,
6'5" and 5/8, 94th percentile. So almost there to the 100th. His weight, 315 pounds. That's the 76th percentile. It's the only one that's not at the 90th. Right?
And that's a big man too, Josh.
It is. His wingspan, 86 inches, is the 99th percentile. For those of you who are trying to do the math, right? 86 divided by 12. That's over 7 feet. That's 7
foot 2 inches.
2 inches wingspan, right? His arm length at 34 3/4 is the 92nd percentile, and his hands, 11 inches.
Yeah.
Right. That's the 97th percentile. He's a physical monster.
Yeah.
And when he wants to turn it on, he turns it on. There was a rep at the Senior Bowl. We were both there, right? Where he gets beat. And also there is a streak of him where you can see he wants to compete. He did Shrine Bowl. Yeah. And then because other guys dropped out, and for those who don't know, Shrine Bowl happens basically the weekend before Senior Bowl, right? Right. So literally like the last day or the game, the Shrine Bowl game is happening while Senior Bowl is starting up, like the practices. So he did Shrine Bowl and then got a late invite to Senior Bowl to basically take over for somebody who had dropped out. And he went and he did that, right? So that shows, I think, a little bit of in terms of his competitiveness and his willing. And he got to Senior Bowl and first day, he started making some noise. Yeah. There was one rep, and credit to Trevor Sikkema and Connor Rogers at the NFL Draft Stock Exchange.
Yep.
They were just talking about this rep, and they reminded me of it, where he lost a one-on-one. He was so pissed.
Yeah.
He turns to the coach and he's like, "No, I'm going again." Like, and for those who don't know, it's you're in a rotation. You do the rep, whether you win or lose. You move to the back of the line. Next guy's up. He's like, "No, I'm doing it." And then he just he was just a monster. He just crushed the guard. Yeah. Right? So he made up for it. So you get that mean streak. You get that when he wants to turn it on, he can rush the passer, which is not something most of the guys in this draft class can do at this position. He can push the pocket. He can win by just being the biggest, baddest dude in the world.
Yeah.
So then why would the Bucs be able to take him in the third round? Because it's not consistent. And that's the big thing. Can he consistently do that? He's probably he is a better run defender than he is a pass rusher. He doesn't really know what he's doing as a pass rusher. It's just basically, I'm going to knock this guy backwards till I get to the quarterback.
Right.
There's not a lot of finesse to his game. There's not a lot of intelligence to his game. And I'm not saying he's a dumb player. I'm saying the way he wins, it's not this, I'm going to out
smash. Right.
He's
more Incredible Hulk than he is David Banner.
Bruce Banner. Yeah, he's not Bruce Banner.
Right.
So,
well, you say Bruce Banner. I say David Banner because I used to watch the TV show and his name was Dr. David Banner with David Bixby and Lou Ferrigno as the Hulk.
Okay. So, yeah, that's a little bit before my
David
time.
Bruce.
I usually bond over those things.
I know we do. Yeah.
So anyway, but I mean, he's got some of the best flashes in this draft class. So Bucs can get bigger with him. They can get meaner with him.
Yes.
And they can provide themselves with a little bit of long-term stability at that position group, because you look at their top 4 defensive tackles right now, and only one of them is set to be with the team next year, and that would be Elijah Cansey.
Right.
Vita Vea is a free agent after this year. There's been no talks about an extension for Vita. Ashawn Robinson is a 1-year deal, right? Yeah. So this would give them a little bit more long-term and be able to contribute year one as a depth guy.
And that's why you draft him this year, Josh. You get him ready, because a lot of times defensive tackle is the hardest position to come in and play, right? Yep. You draft this guy this year, and he's got Vita Vea, 31-year-old Vita Vea in one ear, and 31-year-old Ashawn Robinson in the other. So he's getting nothing but veteran stereo about how to play defensive tackle in the NFL from those guys. Oh, and by the way, Marcus West gets rave reviews as a defensive line coach. So you drafted for this guy too, and you say, hey, develop him and turn him into a starter. And you give him those role models to look up to. And that might be the case in 2027 and beyond with Darrell Jackson. Maybe he gets it. Maybe he becomes consistent when he has those voices, in his ear and in his head.
And what I like about that, when you were talking there about he's the voices in his head, that it's a lot different for him to get advice from Ashawn and from Vita than it is for Kalijah. Because he's built like those other two.
Yes.
In terms of, we're going to win by being big and strong.
That's
and
exactly
so the advice carries. And when you hear Ashawn go, well, this is what I do. Well, I can do the same things physically that Ashawn can do. Right. If Ashawn tries to give Elijah Cansey advice and he goes, well, just do this. And Elijah's going to be like, I can't do that. I got to do something completely different.
Exactly
right? With Jackson, there is that similarity there.
Yeah. Speaking of advice, folks, if you are needing legal advice in the realm of workers' comp, Social Security, or personal injury, you know where to turn. The folks over at Jorgensen Law P.A.
At Jorgensen Law, we aren't just a law firm. We're a family business. For over 30 years, our firm has stood up for people when they need it most. Our family represents individuals and families who are injured or disabled and are facing some of the most stressful, difficult moments of their lives. From personal injury and workers' compensation to Social Security disability claims, we know how overwhelming the process can feel, and we believe each client deserves personal attention.
We fight for you like family, and we charge no fees or costs unless we recover for you. If you've been hurt or can't work due to injury or illness, call Jorgensen Law at 727-347-7733. Experience, integrity, and advocacy you can trust.
Spencer and Grady Jorgensen, two fantastic guys, big Tampa Bay fans, big fans of Pewter Report as well. Give them your business. They are the champions of the injured and disabled. Free case evaluation and no fees until they win for you. JorgensenLawOffice.com is where you can find them. Again, personal injury, workers' compensation, Social Security. Give them a call, 727-347-7733. Josh, we're going to turn the page to day 3 and probably do a little bit more rapid fire with these next 4 picks for the Buccaneers here. We're sticking with defense. This is music to my ears. Just keep drafting defense. I love it. But you know what? They need it because their defense wasn't so good last year or the year before. So we're going to go cornerback. That was maybe the one position that we didn't address in our last draft. We're going to sacrifice the wide receiver position, but we're going to go with the corner. And the player we've selected here is Hezekiah Masses, otherwise known as Zeke. Zeke Masses from Cal. Spent the first 4 years at Florida International before he transferred to Cal. So he is a Florida guy by nature. Big-time ball hawk, 13 interceptions and 13 pass breakups and 5 interceptions from this kid.
Yeah.
But Todd Bowles wanted ball hawks last year. I don't think that's going out of style at One Buccaneer Place in the war room. This kid's got a game face, man. He's a competitor. He's not the biggest guy. He's 6'1", so he's got some length to him, but he's 179 pounds. And that might seem a little light for a Todd Bowles defense, but he's pretty scrappy. He's pretty feisty. He's not afraid to hit. Will he take on big backs? That's kind of the challenge, but I don't know a lot of cornerbacks that like to take on big backs. But he is not afraid to mix it up with wide receivers. Very good timing, very good in zone coverage. He's one of those guys that can kind of split his vision. Sometimes, in Zion McCollum, this is not his strong suit. He'll get caught looking at the quarterback in zone coverage, peeking in the backfield, seeing where the quarterback's going to go with the ball, and then he loses sight of the receiver. I would say one of Mass's better talents is having one eye on the quarterback and one eye on the receiver. He sticks to the receiver like glue, but also knows when the ball's coming and times those pass breakups and interceptions just right. So day 4, you get a cornerback. Is he ready to start? No, this is not a starting caliber cornerback, not as a rookie, but he's a player that you can develop. He's got 4.46 speed. He's not the best athlete. He's not terribly explosive. That's why he'll be a day 3 guy rather than a day 2 guy. He's a good depth piece. And I do like the fact if you're going to bring him in, he does have some ball hawking ability. So if you lose your number 1 or number 2 corner, it's not like you're going to be stuck with a Kendall Vildor that really can't make plays. This guy can make some plays.
He definitely can. You talked about the ball hawking nature, and I think it's just he's aggressive overall. So the high side of that aggressiveness is the turnovers and the passes defense and the forced incompletions. And I think that's his superpower is being able to force those incompletions. Low side of that, though, he also has 14 penalties over the last 2 years. So he can get grabby downfield. And I think a lot of those pass deflections weren't interceptions because he does struggle to locate the ball deep. And then you mentioned the speed, 4.46. I think on tape, there are going to be vertical matchups that he'll struggle with. And this is all why he's more of like a day 2, day 3 kind of guy. But he does have a smooth back pedal, and I think he's a pretty smart player. He's got a natural feel for dropping off his responsibility and undercutting throws. That's where you get some of those forced incompletions and those pass breakups. He will trigger fast to the flat, which is really nice too. And that helps him even with being smaller. He's just in position to make some of those tackles. With that said, he's in the 40th percentile for tackle rate. But in terms of when he's targeted, he's in the 82nd percentile for quarterback rating allowed. He's in the 61st rate for target rate, which means that he's dissuading throws to him. And he's in the 60th percentile for yards per coverage snap. So some things to like about him. I worry about that frame. That's the biggest thing. Like we talk about the Bucs getting bigger, and he's tall, but he's such a wiry frame. It has me. Who was the kid? I want to say out of Mississippi State.
Emmanuel Forbes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very Emmanuel Forbes like. Now, Forbes has had a bit of a renaissance to his career. I want to say with
great game against the Bucs last year. Former first round pick of the Commanders.
And just didn't work out there, but went over to the Rams, and they've been able to make something out of him. So the body type can work. It's a thin needle to thread, but the ball hawking stuff and the fact that he's the tall frame, which we know Todd Bowles really likes, He really has only broken that theme once, and that was with Jacob Parrish. Parrish plays like he's 6'1".
He does, yeah.
So you can see that's the thing I think is going to be a real big theme for this draft. Can you see the vision? I can see the vision there.
Yeah, we have a couple super chats to get to, and as always, we try to stop the show for those. And appreciate Realtor David Zussman for this $4.99 super chat. Is D-Jack reliable on the run game? Someone who can hold down the fort when we rotate Vita Vea. So this is, of course, about Darrell Jackson, and I say yes. He is a player that, and I've done some research on him, that is he can essentially two gap as well. He's got the strength in his hands where he can literally occupy the center of the guard, control him, and basically do this. When you two gap, you're responsible. And occasionally you'll see this in Todd Bowles. Todd Bowles traditionally a one gap type of defense, but he will have some two gap principles when he does some fire zones and things like that. But yes, he does have the strength in his hands to really occupy a guard if he's not just driving him back into the lap like Vita Vea has been prone to do into the lap of quarterbacks. He can control an interior offensive lineman and essentially play two gaps. We also have a chat here from, this is Sean Ray, 9899, member for 1 month, who is a Pewter Report TV channel member. Thank you very much for your support.
Thank you, Sean Ray.
Curious as to what the different perspectives are between Mesidor's age and Demetrius Knight's last year, considering both were 25 entering the draft. Go Bucs. The Bucs actually liked Demetrius Knight. They were not afraid of his age. They were high on him. They had him in for an official 30 visit. I don't know where he went and what happened to him. I have tunnel vision on the Buccaneers, so after the draft is over, I just
went to the Bengals, I want to say, in the second round, and was part of a linebacking core that was actually worse than the Bucs last year.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. But he's a player that I liked. I think we had him in a mock draft or two for the Buccaneers. The Bucs did like him, but what's the difference? They were both the same age. It's maturity. Like when you enter the league at that age, you typically have a different level of maturity, and not always, but that's kind of the case. I remember with Demetrius Knight, he was playing at Charlotte. And he has a wife and kids, and literally after games, he would go out and DoorDash after playing a 3-hour football game to put money on
and food on the table.
And food on the table, exactly.
Yeah,
to me, that's a high level of commitment right there.
Yeah, I remember the process that you and I were going through, and just a high level human, right? Yeah. And I think the big thing and the underrated part about a older player is, it's not always, but often, like you said, the maturity. It's a big change going from college to the NFL. Yeah. Less so these days because a lot of these guys are getting lots of money, right? But in the old days, you would say this is a kid who goes from like struggling to have food, right? Yeah. Some of these guys to now being a multimillionaire, right? And can you adjust to that change? Yeah. Less so these days because a lot of these guys are making money in college, but but there's still that this is now a job. It takes up 10, 12, 14 hours of your day. Your diet is being monitored. Every minute of your day, you're supposed to be doing something to make yourself a better football player. It requires a ton of focus and a lot of discipline. Yes, and discipline. And with Mesidor, especially, you hear the comments that Jason Taylor made about him. I definitely know with Demetrius Knight. They're going to be able to make that transition easier. Yeah. That's the high side of getting an older prospect. That's right. The low side is you don't have much of a ceiling from where you are. You are what you are kind of as you walk in. Whereas somebody like a Jeremiah Trotter or Josiah Trotter. Yeah. Josiah Trotter. 20. There's, there's lots to like about where he is right now. And then you can dream upon what he can be. Yeah. If he can reach that potential, he's got a long on-ramp, right? Yeah. To get on the highway to success. Exactly. So Sean Ray, I would say my thoughts on both players are about the same, which is I'm not a huge fan of somebody that old because you don't have much room to grow. And yes, they're great college players. That doesn't mean they're going to be a great pro player. And if they don't grow, then what are you really getting? That's kind of the take there. Yeah.
So we're going to go in the 4th round with Zeke Masses. And in the 5th round, a familiar face. This is a guy that Josh and I, we just like too much. Jeremiah Wright. Big. I think that's been the theme, with the exception of the 179-pound Zeke Masses. We like big guys this year, Josh, and I think the Bucs will too.
Guys, we like getting the Bucs picks right. That's
right. That's true. Yeah, I mean, I like big football players. If you're big and fast and athletic and you can play, I like big guys over small guys. And this guy is he's a road grader. He's a mauler. A little bit different from Cody Mauch. He is the opposite of Cody Mauch in the fact that Cody was a kind of thin-ish left tackle that had to put on some size and try to look more like a guard. He kind of went on the Alex Kappa transition from small school left tackle to NFL guard, and I think Cody's done that successfully. But Cody is going to be the kind of guy, and you've seen it, that will literally outrace the running backs on screen passes to the end zone. He's that athletic. Jeremiah Wright, not so much, but what this guy can do with short area quickness, if you want to do some duo, if you want to do some gap scheme, this guy will absolutely kick your ass, and he'll take your name. And had a really good Senior Bowl. I like this player. He's a mauler. He's a finisher. He's nasty. He's got a nasty disposition on the football field. There's a lot to like about him, and I think the Buccaneers like that kind of nastiness, because even though Cody is an athlete, he will finish you. He's got some Gedeke mean streak in his game as well, and I think that's what made the Buccaneers fall in love with Cody Mauch at North Dakota State, was that mean streak and that finisher mentality, and that's kind of the same mentality that Jeremiah Wright has.
Yeah, I would love this pick right off the bat because it would signal that they're sticking with a gap scheme, and Zach Robinson isn't coming in as a wide zone acolyte who's just going to try and implement that. Right off the bat, I would probably figure out how to do a backflip if they did that because of the signal that it sends. What's interesting about him, and I think you profiled him so beautifully there, Scott, is he is an effective mover for the scheme that he is built for. Yeah. And like you said, he's a great gap blocker. But you put him on a pull, and he can pull pretty well. Like he gets around there. Yeah. That's that short area quickness that you were talking about. And then the targeting is really good to find linebackers or safeties who are dropping down and really erase them and create those lanes on counter and on guard pulls. So I love that. Love that it's kind of like a bowling ball build to him. Just a really strong run defender. Which I think is where the Bucs need to get to in terms of like reestablishing this is our game. We're going to build off of this. Everything's going to go from there. So and he's been a durable 24-game starter. Yeah. And
battle tested in the SEC,
Yeah, exactly. And a chippy's physical demeanor. He stares square and he's inside out on his one-on-one pass protection when he engages cleanly. So and if I remember correctly, he used to be a defensive tackle and he switched to offensive line.
I like him for that reason too.
Yeah, just a really cool kind of story and path. And then when you add in the size, I think you've got something there to be able to mold and build.
Yeah, for sure. And another defensive player, because why not? They need defensive players. And it's interesting because we doubled up at linebacker in this year. In drafts past, we've doubled up at edge rusher, right? We've had Cassius Howell and Nadeem Tucker. We've had R. Mason Thomas and Nadeem Tucker. We're putting a pause on our Nadeem Tucker crush for this draft. Sad face. So we're only going to go with one edge rusher, but we're going to double up at inside linebacker. The thinking here is they need a Mike linebacker, and that's what Jake Golday can be, that Mike linebacker for them. Bigger, stout, 6'4", 240 pounds, bigger guy. Not quite Jack Campbell, but think along those lines. But the interesting thing is, as Josh brought up the point here, he played overhang a lot. He played in the slot quite a bit as a linebacker at Cincinnati. They moved him all around, and they've interviewed a lot of overhang linebackers this year. Mm-hmm. Kyle Lewis from Pitt is one. Justin Jefferson from Alabama is another. The difference is both those guys are like 6'1", 220. Golday is big, and this is another guy that played a lot in the overhang. Shoot, he was a safety at Oklahoma State. This is our 6th round pick, a player that I really have kind of come to have a little secret draft crush on. I interviewed him at the Combine, and his name is Kendall Daniels. He played last year at Oklahoma after he played 4 years at Oklahoma State. Now, Kendall Daniels was originally a safety at Oklahoma State.
Yep.
He came to school at 6'4", 205 pounds as a safety. And last year he played at Oklahoma at 6'5", 245 pounds. So he kept growing and growing and growing. And folks, as you can see there, it's not bad weight. He's sitting in the weight room and he's just putting on size. So he grew from a safety to a linebacker, kind of like Sonny Styles, but just based upon the position, going from safety to linebacker. This guy's not the athlete. He's not the player that Sonny Styles is. Don't get it twisted, okay? But what I do like about Kendall Daniels is a lot of things. He has some range to him. And what I also like is he ran a 4.7 in the 40-yard dash at his pro day. And that's really slow. And that's fine, because when you watch the tape, he's literally one of the fastest players on the field. And I've had this confirmed with some NFL scouts that I know. And they say, yeah, this is just one of those guys that, you know, you put the football pads on him and you watch the film and he's the Flash. He's a blur. He gets there. He has football speed. He plays faster than he times. And at Oklahoma State, his first year as a safety, 71 tackles, 6.5 tackles for loss, 3 interceptions, 5 pass breakups, a forced fumble, and a safety. Hello. He was a freshman All-American. Then his second season, started playing a little bit of linebacker at Oklahoma State, 105 tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 2 interceptions, pass breakup, a forced fumble, and 2 fumble recoveries. Then his final season at Oklahoma State, 64 tackles, 10.5 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks, 7 pass breakups. Then he transfers to Oklahoma, where they have a star-studded group, right? You got R. Mason Thomas, you got Grayson Halton in front of you. They've got Owen Heineke, the other linebacker, who was a former rugby player. He came in, 53 tackles, 9 tackles for loss, 3 pass breakups, and a fumble recovery. This kid will absolutely hit stick you. He has got range. He has got size. He's got coverage ability. There's a lot to like about him. He's going to be a steal for somebody on day 3. He can blitz. He can do a lot of things. I think he's a perfect scheme fit for what Todd Bowles wants to do. He can play big nickel. He could play a quasi safety position. He can play a box linebacker. You draft him and you let him continue to grow, and I think he could be the eventual replacement for Alex Anzalone as that weak side Mo linebacker, that money linebacker in Tampa.
You know, so full disclosure for our viewers, Scott texted me at one point and said, I'm going to make you a Kendall Daniels fan. And I think you have. Okay.
Okay, good. All right.
I got him late. I can see, that's my theme for this show. I can see the vision,
my vision.
right?
Yeah.
So, but I would say I almost see him more as a middle linebacker than necessarily as the weak side or the Mo.
Yeah.
And you talk about that frame, and it's not a perfect comp, but I mean, it reminds me a lot of Fred Warner, who played overhang in college before turning into a middle linebacker. Yep. So he's got that size. He's a little bit taller and a little bit thicker than Warner was. Warner also, I want to say, ran like a 4.64, right? So didn't test as this amazing runner, but you watch Fred Warner on tape and he's everywhere all the time. And so I can see him in that mold. That's not to say that I think he's Fred Warner, but see him in that mold. I love the coverage chops and the background as a safety. Yeah. And I think probably the number one thing I've liked about him from my brief watch, I haven't done a full eval, is the blitz timing.
Yes.
He can accelerate through creases. He's fearless going into the pile. And he finds his way out to the other side. What was it, 5.5 sacks in 2024, if I remember correctly?
Correct.
And then he just seems to be very coachable, for that position change,
Right.
and being and absorbing it and saying, look, yeah, I can do this. With that said, can you give me that tackle number again from 2025?
63.
63.
Yeah.
And the number of snaps that he played, and this is my one big concern there, 15th percentile for tackles.
Yeah.
With that said, what's interesting is he was in the 49th percentile for stop rate. So he's not filling up the stats sheet with empty tackles, which some other linebackers in this class do. And Bucs fans who remember the Barrett Ruud days, that's all he did, right? Yeah. But this guy, when he makes a play, it's a play. Yeah. And it actually stops the offense and prevents them from having a positive. So kind of a cool player, developmental, but again, I can see the vision. And on a day 3 and a guy who I think would be excellent on special teams.
Yes, dominant special teams.
I like it.
So when I had a chance to interview him at the Combine, and of course, one of the things I asked, have you met with the Buccaneers? He said yes. And I said, formally or informally? He said, formally. So he's a formal interview. Now, they don't just interview the top guys at the Combine for formal interviews. They will do that for some of the top guys. They will also do that for day 3 guys, right? Because they want to build a relationship with you. So in case they don't draft you in the 6th or 7th round and you're an undrafted free agent, you might be a priority free agent. Remember, J.J. Roberts had an official 30 visit with the Buccaneers. He also, I believe, had a formal interview at the Combine. They didn't draft him, but he was a priority free agent because they built the relationship. Yep. And when he didn't get drafted, they called him up and said, hey, JJ, remember us? We had you in the facility. We talked to you for hours. You met Todd Bowles. Well, we'd like to sign you. We think you're going to fit in down here. That's how the process works. So with a guy like Kendall Daniels, he said that the formal interview with the Bucs was one of the best, and he would love to play for Todd Bowles in this scheme. And one of the things that I asked him, I said, what type of player would the Buccaneers get if they drafted you? And he said, an aggressive hit player that loves to hit. And that appears on tape. But he also said, I'm a glue guy. I'm a glue guy in the locker room. I get along with everybody. I'm a high energy guy. And that's the football character that this team likes. They like guys that fit in, that have their fit, and he checks a lot of boxes for a late day pick, right? And he's not one of those smash last, stick him out there, he's ready to play kind of guys. But as you mentioned, on teams, I think he would shine. And then Todd Bowles is going to cross train you between Mike and Mo, so he's going to get both. And with that frame, 6'5", 245, there's a lot to do with that. The last thing I'll say about him, Josh, and if you watched some of the footage that I sent you, he's tall, but how many times did he knife through and literally wrap up the ankles? The agility for a big man like that to go down low, right? Because a lot of times you see bigger, taller players, even Golday, they kind of wrap up and tackle high. They don't have that flexion and that flexibility to dip down. And this guy will literally, take your legs out from under you, clip your heels together and do that form tackle. And he did that over and over and over again behind the line of scrimmage for tackles for loss. He did that out blowing up screens. He will put his body on the line and literally dive and take your legs out from under you. And not a lot of guys can do that at 6'5", 240 plus pounds.
Yeah. And I think you summed it up perfectly. He hasn't, guys who are that tall typically have trouble with pad level, and he just doesn't. Right. I think that's the best way. Yeah. So, and then he ran a 4.3. I was thinking of his shuttle time, 4.32.
Yeah.
In the short shuttle at Oklahoma's pro day. I'm trying to pull up the percentile for that. If you want to move on, I'll just update everybody.
Sure. Yep. We have a super chat here from Kings Are Awful, $5 super chat. Thank you. SR, 2 questions. JP seems to think that the Lasers may be gearing to sell. What say you? I don't necessarily think they're looking to sell the team. I don't think that at all. Let's put it this way: I don't have any knowledge of that. I don't know what they're going to do with the stadium. I feel like they have to do something with the stadium, especially with the Rays knocking on the door. The Rays are interested in building a stadium across the street from Raymond James Stadium and right next door to the Yankees facility and their Steinbrenner Field. So I don't think the Bucs want to be upstaged by the Rays building a brand new stadium across the street from their stadium, which was built in 1998. So I think they're kind of being forced into doing something with the stadium, and we'll have to see. Second part of the question, also, if Bulls never got the extension, would we have a new head coach right now? I don't know. That's a very good question. I don't know. In my conversations with Joe Laser, they're still all in on Todd Bowles, right or wrong, and they believe last year injuries played a massive role in the team's decline. And they're focusing more on the 6-2 start than the 2-7 finish. I'm kind of one of these, what have you done for me lately kind of guys. I focus a little bit more on the 2-7 than I do the 6-2. But it's their team. They get to make that call. I will say this, and I said this on the podcast the other day. This feels like a fork in the road, crossroad type of year. That this thing's either going to go up or it's going to go down. And I think either way, Todd Bowles, this might be his last year in Tampa either way. If the Bucs have another losing record, they don't turn the corner, the defense doesn't get better, whatever the case, if they don't win the division and have a winning record and get back to the playoffs, the Blazers have never allowed a coach with back-to-back losing seasons to stay on for a third year. So given their track record, he would be fired. I can also see a situation where if Baker Mayfield has a really good year, if Zach Robinson comes in and is maybe not Liam Cohen 2.0, but kind of close, better than what Josh Grizzard did, better than what maybe Dave Canales did in 2023, and he starts getting some sniffs for head coaching opportunities in 2027, I don't think that Blazers are going to let what happened with Liam Cohen happen again, especially with Baker Mayfield's contract coming up. You're going to want to keep Baker Mayfield with the offensive coordinator this time around if that scenario happens. So I could see them pull a switcheroo and hire Zach Robinson to maintain that continuity. They've done that before with Dirk Cutter. They kept him on with Jameis Winston to grow that connection. So we shall see. A lot of football to be played between now and that time next year to make those decisions. And as I've said, Josh, and let me get your thoughts on this. I don't know what's going to happen this year. Last year, we all expected this team to kind of go 11-5, right? To at least be 10-7, right?
Yep.
Or I should say 11-6 because the 18.
I had them going to the Super Bowl.
Right. But we expected that. I could see this team going like 8-9, or I could see them go. I'm sorry, 8-10. I'm getting ahead of myself. They're not at 18 games yet. They want to be, but they're not there. I can see them go 8-9, or I could see them go, 10-7. I can see a path for either, like a bounce back year or a stuck in the mud year. But either way, it's going to be exciting and it's going to be a mystery. And I'm really, really curious to see how the season's going to play out. Not that I'm not looking forward to any other season in years past, but I'm really looking forward to this season because I truly don't know which way the ship is going to turn.
Yeah, I think that this is going to be a very interesting season because you have some of the things that in the past that you could kind of bank on aren't here anymore. Yeah. And with that, it's introducing more variants, like you mentioned. Yes. Real quick, I did look up Kendall Daniels' 4.32 shuttle time would be the 46th percentile for linebackers, slightly below average. But when you're doing these evals, you have to allow for his size is in the bigger. So he's basically got average agility for all linebackers while being bigger than most. So I would say his agility, when you factor in his size, is a plus.
Yeah, I would agree. What else is a plus is if you are looking for legal representation, the folks over at Jorgensen Law have got plenty of experience, and they're also going to give you a free case evaluation, and there's no fees until they win for you.
Welcome to Jorgensen Law P.A., where our family's legacy drives us to fight for your rights. Specializing in personal injury, workers' compensation, and Social Security, we're committed to winning for you. No fees unless we succeed. Trust in our family to help yours. Let's achieve justice together.
That's right, folks. Once again, if you need legal representation, turn to the folks over at Jorgensen Law P.A. They're the champions of the injured and disabled. Please help support the Pewter Report partners. Our advertising partners would greatly appreciate it. So if you have the need for personal injury, workers' compensation, or Social Security, again, call Jorgensen Law PA 727-347-7733, or look them up on the web at jorgensenlawoffice.com. Josh, we are down to our final pick in the 7th round, and last year was a good one. Tez Johnson. That was a hell of a good pick in the 7th round. Boy, they needed him. Who would have thought that this kid would come in and have 5 touchdowns and actually have more touchdowns than either Chris Godwin or Mike Evans last year? I think he had what Godwin and Evans had combined in his rookie season as his 7th round pick. Kind of crazy.
Yeah. What was interesting was at the beginning of the season, I'll speak for myself. You're like, he's a gadget guy, and he's going to have to beat out the other Johnson, Cam Johnson, for that roster spot of kind of the returner / gadget guy.
Yeah.
And I think the Bucs saw something in him at Oregon. I mean, he was insanely productive at Oregon, but in a very specialized role. But there was enough traits on there that they said Oregon may have been underutilizing this kid. Mm-hmm. And I actually remember talking with JP Peterson. JP's like, I think this kid can go downfield. And I'm like, well, nothing in how he was used at Oregon would. And JP was right, and the Bucs started using him that way. And I mean, he's a real route runner. He's got nuance to his game, and he's somebody that they have consistently gone out of their way to mention here in the off season as a part of their future plans. And with Mike Evans gone, that even carves out a bigger role. I think Jason Light specifically said this gives more opportunity. Mike being gone gives more opportunity to not just Emeka Egbuka and Jalen Millen. He came out and specifically said it also opens up stuff for Tez Johnson.
That's exactly right. I appreciate this comment here from Sean Ray. Scott's the best at rolling over into the ad break. Well, that's because I learned from the best. The late, great Mark Cook, the legendary badass, ginger badass. I love that guy. Miss him. I think about Mark Cook every single day. There's something Bucs related or just funny related. We were both big fans of 70s sports that follow on
Super 70 Sports. Yep.
Super 70 Sports. Yeah, that's the best. We would always text each other funny things from there because Mark was a year older than me. 53. He would have been 54 this year. R.I.P. Cookie.
He was also wasn't he? And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I got this. The old timey Ryan Fitzpatrick Twitter account. He was he was
Colonel Fitzpatrick. Yes, yeah, he was. He was behind that, which was crazy. I didn't even know that until like halfway through the season. He's like, that I'm like, and I forgot the handle, like Colonel Ryan Fitzpatrick or whatever, And I said, no, you're not. And he literally showed me like his alternate Twitter account. I was like, oh my God, you are. That's genius. He's like, great. I don't know what to do about it now. Like all these tweets get retweeted and they're so popular, but boy, is he going to be pissed off it's me or whatnot. Interesting. I actually saw Ryan Fitzpatrick talking with new Browns head coach Todd Monken at the NFL annual dinner the other night on Monday night. I was literally walking out to my Uber and I saw Monk and I saw Fitz there. And I walk up and they both recognized me, and I've been texting Todd Monken for years since he was in Georgia. We're friends, and I walk up and Todd Monken's like, Scott Reynolds, and I said, oh, hold on, I'm having flashbacks here. Monk and Fitz, week 1, Bucs versus Saints at New Orleans, 48 points, right?
I remember that.
Cracking up. Yeah, and Fitz is like, yeah, that's exactly right. So good times. All right, so let's go offense here and just give them who really is quickly becoming our favorite Buccaneer draft pick, because I think we've had him in every single one, or maybe at least 3 out of the 4. We're talking about our guy, Will Kazmarek from Ohio State, the blocking tight end who can occasionally catch some passes. You know, the Buccaneers have been sniffing around tight ends, Josh. They have. They've had 3 in for official 30 visits.
Mm-hmm.
They had 7 formal interviews with tight ends in the combine. And it's kind of crazy, right? Because they just re-signed Cade Otton for 3 years, $10 million, which makes you happy because you're the president of his fan club, okay? And then they re-signed Queipo. And they still have Devin Culp, who every fan out there wants as a wide receiver, but the guy can't see the field because he's not that good. And then Payne Durham is in a contract year. So they have their 4 tight ends back from last year. But this feels like musical chairs where one of those guys is going to kind of go because they're going to draft the tight end. And they might draft this guy. They liked him at the Senior Bowl where he really stood out to us. He can block. He's big. He's 6'6". He's nasty. I think he's kind of an upgrade over Payne Durham in that regards, and probably a little bit better receiver, and certainly can block, which is something Devin Culp can just not learn how to do.
Yep. But I think the thing that surprised me with Kazmarek was he tested better than I expected.
Yeah.
Now, I think the RAS score is a little misleading because he ended up with like a 9.1 or 9.2 RAS. It's a little bit misleading because most of that is just was driven by the fact that his height and weight, right? Yeah. He's almost 6'6". He's 261 pounds. So that really drove it. But what I did not expect was that his 40-yard dash at 4.74, it's in the 54th percentile. But the vert jump and the broad jumps were the 2 that kind of surprised me. 36-inch vert and 119-inch broad jump, both 70th percentile or better for the tight end position. I think that he is the perfect third tight end in the modern day NFL. He is more athletic than Queipo, I would say. Yeah. And he brings the same mentality. Queipo is a better blocker at this point. But this kid does not lack for the mentality needed. He just has to work on some of his form and technique and everything like that. But what he would probably bring that Queipo doesn't have is that athleticism as kind of that surprise change up. We can get him the ball. And then especially in the red zone with that frame, he could be somebody that you use in the low red zone and get the ball. And, you know, he's a guy who I wouldn't be surprised if a couple years down the road, he's got 14 catches on the season for 90 yards and 5 touchdowns.
Oh, yeah.
So just kind of one of those profiles. And the NFL is moving more to 12 and 13 personnel. Mm-hmm. And Zach Robinson is one of those guys who uses a ton of tight ends. So I could see this being, and I think fans don't realize this. Most 7th round picks don't make the roster their first year.
That's right.
But Will Kazmarek, I think as a 7th round pick could definitely make the roster in his rookie year.
And it feels like, you know, Payne Durham probably not going to see a second contract in Tampa, right? Because you draft a guy like this, that you're drafting his replacement, and then Devin Culp may not make the roster this year, right? If you can't block, into year 3, you don't serve that much of a purpose. And again, he's had 2 offensive coordinators here, right? He's had Liam Cohen and Josh Grizzard, and neither one of them put him on the field unless somebody was really hurt, right? So this is kind of the put up or shut up year for Devin Culp. And then, of course, Queipo, good special teams player, good blocker, signed a 1-year deal. It's not guaranteed. So he gets to go to camp and compete, but we'll see if he ends up making the team. So Will Kazmarek and Jeremiah Wright are the offensive players, and we got a whole slew of defensive players, some big dudes. Kendall Daniels, 6'5", Jay Golday, 6'4", Darrell Jackson, 315 pounds of defensive tackle with 10-foot arms. and then you got Akheem Mesidor, who has got the bag of pass rush moves that everybody wants but doesn't have. So, and then Hezekiah Masses has got the interceptions and then pass breakups Todd Bowles wants. So a lot of needs met by the Buccaneers in this draft. We hope you've enjoyed it. I certainly enjoyed doing every one with Josh Queipo. And we have another one for you. That's coming up the week prior to the draft, so just a couple weeks. So hopefully this will tide you over till then. We appreciate all the folks over at Jorgensen Law Office for the sponsorship of our mock draft as well as our mock draft shows, and greatly appreciate them. If you need legal representation, give Grady and Spencer Jorgensen your call, and they will give you the best legal help that they can provide. And again, no fees until they win and a free case evaluation. That's hard to beat in the legal world today, because lawyers love to run up the bills. And these guys won't do that unless they win for you. So that's a pretty good starting point to get you to give them a call. Josh, any final words on the mock draft before we sign off for tonight?
On the mock draft, no, but I'm going to play off the Jorgensen thing.
Okay.
You were talking about how some lawyers charge a lot, and it just reminds me of an old joke. Guy walks into a lawyer's office and said, "How much do you charge?" And the lawyer said, $500 for 3 questions. What are your other 2 questions?
That's very good. That's great. Greatly appreciate everybody for tuning in tonight. Make sure that you check out the Pewter Report podcast Monday through Thursday. And make sure you check out the one from April 1st, which is April Fool's Day. If you haven't watched it yet, I'm not going to spoil it for you. We got Josh pretty good on it. But watch the first couple minutes. It's got a special guest. And I'm not talking about Eileen Natchik either. It's a special guest that a lot of Pewter reporters would know. So for Josh Queipo, I'm Scott Reynolds saying thanks for watching another edition of our Pewter Report mock draft show. And we'll be back in a couple weeks with our final one as we kick off the 2026 NFL draft here on Pewter Report with our live 3-day draft show. Josh, we're excited you're going to be a part of it. Maybe not on night 1, but you'll be down here for the weekend, and can't wait for that. So for Josh Queipo, I'm Scott Reynolds saying we'll see you in a few weeks, and I'll see you next week on the Pewter Report.